Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's see what you've been saying at home. You're very vexed about these China cyber attacks. Colin says, what the hell is our Secret Service doing? They've only just realised what China's up to. You just couldn't make it up.
We could have told you.
We knew. We're not surprised. So Colin, we agree with you. Quite why it's taken GCHQ or MI6 or whoever it is, MI5. It would be MI5 to know what's going on.
And Rod has said, thank you, Rod, if you know how you vote, if they know how you vote, coupled with mass data held also on you, do you not believe they can influence your decision-making process in any way? They won't know.
I'm not sure they know how you vote because that's
not on record anyway, is it?
It is not.
And Ken says these are only able to be carried out because of computers, internet, mobile phones, etc. It seems to me that these inventions are ruining our lives and therefore we were much safer and much happier without these inventions. There is a school of thought that would agree with that, Ken, very much so.
I sort of often think it myself, really.
Me too.
The dark web. I mean, how many people have been murdered because of the dark web?
You do wonder as well.
Brianna Jai.
Yeah, you do wonder. I look at my kids' generation and I wonder whether they will grow up and have a complete rejection of all of this and they will just say enough because they will think we were all insane for having become so addicted to our phones. I wonder whether, as a generation after generation they will reject it. Wayne, blame Western governments for the rise of China. People were saying this 10 years ago and every country ignored it. That is a really good point, Wayne, because we've taken Chinese investment and obviously our houses are full of items we bought from made in China.
And if you remember as well, we had to get them out of the 5G. Huawei.
We did.
Get them out, literally extricate them from
that was at least one thing I think they did quite well.
Yeah.
And Jan says if they've seen the electoral roll, what else have they been looking at? That's the threat to our democracy. They never do things by halves. I'm much more worried about my own government looking at what I do online, to be fair.
What you said, go back, we said before, the electoral roll is a public document which you can access if you go to your library.
Very good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo alongside Emily Carver, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
It is indeed. It's fantastic to have your company this morning. We have got an action-packed show for you lined up today.
We do indeed. All of the day's top stories with author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and founder of the Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns.
Good stuff. Now, a royal return. Relief across the nation this morning as the King is to resume public duties after a positive response to cancer treatment.
Yes, very good news. Elsewhere, lazy civil servants. They've been asked to return to the office for 2 days a week, but they're refusing and instead they're going on strike. So should they get the sack?
Oh, you couldn't make it up. And are children getting naughtier? England's set for the highest number of school suspensions in a year. But what can we do? And who is to blame? We've got a parenting expert with us later on in the show.
So, really good news about the King. He's going to be out and about again next week. There was some great colour in the Times newspaper this morning explaining what he's been up to during his downtime. So I'm not going to reveal it just yet.
Yeah, we get a little bit of insight into what he's been doing.
Very interesting.
At home, excuse me. But please do get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. Anything you want to get in touch with us about all of our topics today, send your views and post your comments visiting gbnews.com/your say. That's how you can get in touch.
Yes, and I'll be on there in a second. Do you like to go on there during your shows?
I do. Sometimes I comment back, so let us know what you think of the show.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, before we do anything else, here's your news with Tatiana.
Ben, thank you very much and good morning. The top stories. First to some breaking news this hour. A major rescue operation is underway after a small boat carrying up to 50 migrants ran aground on a sandbank off the Kent coast. While GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White has the detail. Mark, what is the latest?
Well, this migrant boat ran aground on Goodwin Sands, which is a notorious sandbank a few miles off the Kent coast near Deal. The Coast Guard helicopter and several lifeboats have been involved in this rescue, including some smaller rigid inflatable lifeboats have been ferrying the migrants from that sandbank to the larger lifeboats. This boat that ran aground is one of 4 migrant boats that made it into UK waters today as the People smuggling gangs take advantage of a change in the weather to push these flimsy boats out into the English Channel in the hope of making it to the UK.
GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White there with the detail. We'll, of course, have more later. Mark, thank you. In other news, a British tourist is in intensive care after being attacked by a shark in Trinidad and Tobago. The 64-year-old is receiving critical care after serious injuries to his left arm, his left leg and stomach, according to a local official. The attack happened at Turtle Beach along Great Corlin Bay on Tobago yesterday. Several beaches along the northwestern coast of the island have now been closed. The Foreign Office says it's supporting the victim's family. The Labour Party has warned the cost of Tory chaos is hitting businesses hard, with new analysis from the party revealing just over 1 million businesses report economic uncertainty as the #1 factor impacting their turnover. The analysis comes as the Prime Minister and other senior Tories come under scrutiny for their claims that the economy is turning a corner. Shadow Minister for Industry and Decarbonisation Sarah Jones told GB News the instability within the Conservative Party is the reason for struggling businesses across the country.
If he gets the backing of all his own party, then, as you say, yes, he doesn't have to go. And arguably, he could lead a minority administration. But, you know, if you're a party leader and you've had a vote of no confidence go against you, that does put you in a very difficult position. And it gives you, of course, it gives you an opportunity for the rest of the government to continue to have something to beat you with. There's no doubt about that.
And the King is to return to public duties, with his medical team saying they're very encouraged by the progress he's made in his cancer treatment. A palace spokesperson says King Charles is greatly encouraged to be resuming some public-facing duties and very grateful to his medical team. Buckingham Palace says His Majesty and Queen Camilla will visit a cancer treatment centre on Tuesday to meet medical specialists and patients. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also welcomed the good news, posting on X, saying that it was brilliant news to the end of the week. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ben and Emily.
Welcome back. Very good morning to you. So, some good news. The King, he's to return to public duties next week after responding well to cancer treatment.
Yes, very good news. But it won't yet be a full return to official engagements for the King, but the palace sound rather optimistic.
Yes, they've said, quote, His Majesty's medical team are very encouraged by the progress made so far and remain positive about the King's continued recovery.
Well, joining us now is royal correspondent Jenny Bond. Jenny, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Lovely news.
It is lovely news, and it's very nice to come on television and have something to smile about at last. It's been, as we all know, a grim start to the year for the royal family. And we've all been told that the King has been chomping at the bit to get back to work and sort of saying, well, can I do this? Oh, surely I could do that. And we saw him on Easter Sunday, and to our surprise, doing a walkabout and glad handing a lot of the public who'd gathered there. I was surprised by that, but that was a marker towards this positive statement saying, no, he's not out of the woods, he's not clear of cancer, he's continuing his treatment, but he is well enough now for his doctors to say, yep, I think you can do this and can do that. But it's a cautious step forward. I mean, they still will be reviewing every engagement, pretty much every engagement before it takes place, and they will adapt some so that he doesn't mingle too much with too many members of the public or too many people inside very difficult conditions. It's much better it's going to be outside. I mean, summer's coming, so lots of engagements can be outside. So it's all good news.
Yes, and Jenny, there was some reports this morning suggesting that the King's return will ease the pressure on Prince William and even Catherine, who has been, William at least, has been bearing, you know, I guess the weight of the world on his shoulders in recent weeks.
I think it will, you know. I think Catherine is very dedicated to her role, and she knows there's been this terrific gap in the ranks of the royal family, with her out of action, William out of action because of her, and the king out of action. So Charles stepping back into some public-facing duties is definitely going to make her feel, I think, a little more relaxed about taking the time off that she so clearly needs and wants.
And Jenny, give us an idea of what sort of engagements the king will now be taking part in. What will he not be missing?
Well, they're going to kick things off on Tuesday, actually, with a very appropriate visit, both he and the Queen, to a cancer centre. And that is sending out big signals saying how important cancer treatment is, how important early diagnosis is. I think the indications we've already had will come true, that he will try to be trooping the colour. I mean, that is, after all, the birthday celebration of the monarch. Little odd to have a birthday celebration without the king there, but if it has to be, it has to be, but I think he'll try to be there. I suspect he might take this opportunity to do what his mother did at age 60, and Charles is in his mid-70s, which is to not go on horseback any longer and take to a carriage. It would be much easier for him, clearly. So the trooping, maybe royal escort. We are told that definitely he is going to host an incoming state visit from the Emperor and Empress of Japan. That's a big number. It's pretty heavy on ceremony, as you'll know, very heavy on stamina, actually, as well. But that is definitely in the diary. And I think the other event he will try very hard to be at, but we've not had confirmation, is the D-Day celebrations in Normandy, the D-Day commemorations in Normandy.
And Jenny, there was some really interesting colour in the Times this morning saying that the king had been getting stuck into his hobbies as a way of encouraging his recovery, for example, walking and gardening. And there's a nice little anecdote saying that he's been growing a healing garden in the garden of Sandringham in Norfolk, including 4,000 herbaceous plants and bulbs specifically chosen for their health benefits, such as lavender and delphinium. He's always been a keen gardener, hasn't he, the king?
Oh, my goodness me, yes. I mean, that's at Sandringham, but I've been to Highgrove a number of times, and at Highgrove, he was so proud to show me his herbal pathway. I think that's what he called it. Basically, you walk along a pathway and all the smells of the herbs come up from beneath your feet. And they also have healing qualities, which he's very keen on. He's always been keen on alternative medicine. So that's kept him very focused. And the other thing is his positive attitude about getting back to work. I was listening to an oncologist yesterday who was saying that one of the best things you can do if you're suffering from cancer is concentrate and focus on what you want to be doing next. And what the king wants to be doing next is getting on with the job of being king. He's waited a very long time to do this, and now he wants to get on with it.
Yeah, great. Good news. OK, Jenny, thank you for joining us this morning. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Jenny. Shall we have a little look at some of the other top stories today? We're delighted to be joined by the author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and the founder of the Youth Vote, Alexander Cairn. Great to see you both. Thank you for joining us this morning. Lots to get through. What should we start with? Should we talk about everything that's been going on for Mr Humza Yousaf, First Minister of Scotland? It's been a pretty rubbish week, I would say.
Self-inflicted, though. So Humza Yousaf of the SNP has ended a coalition with the Scottish Greens, which was very important for having the SNP in power. It was called the Bute House Arrangement. It's not unusual to end a coalition, and it's not necessarily the wrong thing to do, but it's how he did it. And he was very flippant and very quick and didn't talk to people and announced it because he's trying to be the powerful leader. And it's backfired. So they are very angry about it, and they're going to back the Scottish Tories when it comes to having a no-confidence vote in him, which will happen next week.
And, Alex, where did it all go wrong for Humza Yousaf? Because there's been a few things. There's been the gender reassignment bill, which was torpedoed by Westminster. There was the Hate Crime Act, which I think Humza Yousaf himself had more complaints about his own rhetoric than anyone else in the first days upon the Act being made law. Where's it all gone wrong for him?
I don't know where it went right, to be honest. I think, you know what, he actually had big shoes to fill. Coming into a role where Nicola Sturgeon had won multiple majorities, it was always going to be difficult for him. I mean, even I saw him on a podcast, actually, with Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. He really was questioned quite hard about what are you going to do for Scotland, you know, what are your plans? And really, all of his answers were very vague, you know. I think he's just someone that's kind of... He narrowly won, obviously, the contest. I don't think anyone in Scotland is particularly that impressed by him. And actually...
He's over-promoted.
Yeah, maybe. I think when it comes to the election, it'll be interesting. I do think that the SNP have been very popular because of the independent kind of question. I think now that that's slightly turning, it'll be interesting to see come an election, because obviously if they don't have a working majority, I think they'll lose. I can't see them winning another election.
I mean, I think we're going to see the resurgence of Scottish Labour. I don't see how not. I think people are so fed up of what happened with Nicola Sturgeon and that ongoing story, which I won't go into details because it's too complicated to talk about right now, but they haven't really got much faith in that party anymore. And the other problem, actually, for the SNP is who's the next leader? There isn't an obvious next leader at all, because actually Humza Yousaf has been so obsessed with being the man. He hasn't cultivated any particularly close staff. So it's not like he's got a deputy that he can then go to and then he can carry on working with him in some capacity. I don't know who is a contender.
And he's certainly not Mr. Popular, is he, at the moment? Shall we move on?
Someone who's had a better week, perhaps, I would argue, is Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, of course. So, aside from some big policy announcements, the defence boost budget, he's also been out and about with the hardest geezer. You know, the guy who ran the length of Africa. What's his name? Russ Cook.
Russ Cook,
So we're going to play you a little video, but basically they ran from Downing Street, past Buckingham Palace, Hyde Park, all in central London, and they had a nice chat on the way. So here's a little taste of it.
One of the biggest challenges is not so much the hours. Right now we're all prepared to work hard. Everyone works hard. The tricky thing is you're going from thing to thing to thing, all of which are different.
Like, you're a Tory Prime Minister, kind of whatever you do is going to upset like at least 50% of people.
But you have to you just have to accept that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As you were saying, you have to accept that. I always say, like, if, at the end of the day, if I look myself in the mirror and know, look, I'm working as hard as I can, doing what I believe is right for the country, and then, you know what, the rest is the rest, right?
So you're such a softie, aren't you, Ben?
I love
you
that.
Look at that and you're sold.
I'm a
you're
sucker.
sold. He's a nice guy. You're a sucker.
I'm a sucker for the content. No,
It's a PR blitz, and it's nice. What can you say really about that negative?
Oh my God, it's so cringy. I absolutely hate it.
Go on, Nikki.
For a start, Rishi Sunak gives us this impression that he's so kind of California health conscious and that he's super fit. He obviously isn't super fit because he was so struggling to talk throughout that and keep up and do that thing where you go and then like wait for the other person to talk to take a breath and like, I know it, I've done that, I've been there. But the other thing about it was like, maybe was that Monday, you know, when he fasts for 24 hours. Can you imagine working with Rishi Sunak on a Monday afternoon? How hangry he must be at that point.
I've not eaten this morning.
What time is it? I ate a lot last night.
You two should fast together.
It's only 10-ish, Ben. You get to 4 or 5 p.m. with Rishi Sunak and he's still not had a morsel. I mean, I just wouldn't want to work with the guy.
Okay, so you wouldn't want to work with him or probably go for a run with him either. What about you, Alex?
I have to agree, I'll be honest. I think the stuff that he does is just not normal. Like, I can't think of anyone that goes for a run and a camera crew follow and they're talking about how did you get into running to impress a girl. I mean, like, it's just so... it's just not normal stuff you talk about a run, you know what I mean?
He doesn't have a kind of naturalness about him, no matter what he talks about.
I thought that was really
unless he's talking about economics or Silicon Valley, which is his happy place, he's not good at being human. I'm sorry, but he isn't.
Well, what about the substance of this week? So he got his Rwanda bill through. We're getting a cut in national insurance. If you're working, you will feel that a little bit in your pay packet this month. What else has gone well for him this week?
I just love the content. The content's been great. That's all I care about.
Defence spending.
Defence spending, yeah.
Defence spending. There are quite a few things that he's ticked off this week.
Yeah.
Will it have an impact on the polls, though?
Well, unfortunately, at the moment, no. And I laugh because actually I do feel for him because no one can question that he's working very hard. I'm sure he's doing ridiculous hours. You know, he's definitely working with his cabinet to think, OK, like, let's think about really, like, let's not do a Boris and just have like lots of like big, you know, like kind of crazy moments. Let's think about substance and policy, which is what he's doing in fairness. You know, defence spending is important. We've got multiple wars in the world. You know, UK has to have a perspective on, you know, supporting Ukraine, supporting the Israel-Gaza situation. However, I think from a polling perspective, I really don't know what's going to move the dial. Like, you know, he could literally say to people, I'm going to give you like a £5,000 bonus in your paycheck.
I mean, you're from the youth vote.
Yeah.
So, are any youths going to vote for Rishi Sunak?
Not many. I don't think it's specifically about Rishi. I think we do make it a very presidential-style election.
It's the Tory brand, isn't it? Which has been painted in...
Yeah, it's not necessarily... I actually think it doesn't matter, even if they replace him, which, let's be honest, if they have a battering in the local election, I could see them... They literally would replace him, but who's going to come in and move the dial on the polls? I really don't know who.
Penny Mordaunt is the person that's touted to be the next leader, but I don't think she's got... I don't think she's got the people power. I don't think young people will vote for her at all.
I don't think the members like her.
No.
The problem with the Conservative Party, from what I've been told, is that it's just full of Lib Dems. There's no real Conservatives there.
I don't know about that.
Lib Dems all very right-wing
The members are probably,
I would argue, members have told me, that's why the Tories are in the predicament they're in, because there aren't any real Conservatives left. Penny Mordaunt is infamous, of course, for her comments on gender ideology and trans things, which has put a lot of members off.
To be fair to her, she did clarify that.
Yeah,
she did clarify that. It seems like all of our politicians have got their...
years later when she had
nappy in a knot over that one.
Maybe not Kemi Badenoch, though, who's also been touted as a possible leader at some point.
She's doing a lot of graft, isn't she? Like, she's running a presidential-style campaign to get elected.
OK, well, look, Nikki, Alex, thank you very much. Feisty start.
Thank you.
Moving on, we go... sorry, I need a coffee.
Coming up.
Can a person be loyal and unfaithful at the same time? This is a really interesting story. I think it's ridiculous, but research says that apparently people are more loyal to their coffee brands and their football clubs than their partners, which I think is a bit ridiculous.
I hope that's not the case. But we'll get stuck into it.
Also, don't forget to keep sending us your messages on gbnews.com/yoursay. We'll read them out very shortly, but for now, we'll be back in a tick.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday, the 2nd of May...
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections. We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday, the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I wonder, is this the fundamental distinction we need to make between Islam, which is a private religion people may practice freely amongst themselves, and Islamism? When you try and place those values upon other people, place that way of being, force it on people who don't want it.
Tom, I have been very much clear about this thing that Islam is a religion and people are free to follow that religion in the UK, in a free Western society. So we have no problem with people following their religion as long as it is not being imposed onto the wider society. And when you talk about drawing a distinction between Islam and Islamism, people like me, you and me, we are drawing that distinction. We're trying to maintain that distinction. But if you look at the commentator from the Muslim community, some commentator, they would like to blur this line and they would ask you, what is Islamism? Where does it exist? Sorry, it does exist. We see it. And the teacher, this incident is an epitome of that kind of, ideology being prevalent, in our society.
Khadija, do you worry that these views are typical for some sections of society? Do you think that there's a problem with some Muslim men, that they have perhaps views that we don't consider to be British values?
There are certain readings of religion which are misogynistic, which are discriminatory, which are homophobic. We need to be honest about it. We need to be calling it out whenever we hear these kind of views. It's been a long time that we are letting these kind of ideologies crawling in, spreading tentacles in British society, and we are just ignoring it in the name of respecting people's culture and religion. You are not suppressing the UK.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, please do keep sending in your messages about all the topics we're talking about today. We've got a few that have come in already. We were talking about Rishi Sunak, whether he's had a decent week in the grand scheme of things. You know, a few good announcements for him. The Rwanda bill is now an act, defence spending pledges, national insurance cut, that sort of thing.
Great social media content, they keep saying. Nick says, good morning, Nick. Sunak is probably great. It's the MPs in cabinets that are the problem. And Jane says, I thought Rishi looked better in sports gear than he does in a suit.
Yes, well, sometimes the suit trousers are a little short.
Well, he mixed it up
recently,
recently, didn't he, with those, was it the Sambas, the trainers he wore with the suit, which caused a bit of controversy.
He had to apologise to the Samba trainer community, which was slightly awkward. Megan says, I like Rishi. Good family man, supports freedom of speech, economy growing. Well, the economy could be growing a little bit more. But yes, it is technically growing. It is technically growing.
Is it 0.1%?
0.1%.
Okay,
you know,
all right.
Look on the bright side.
Darren says, with regards to civil servants, the government should close all their offices and let civil servants work from home. The amount of money that is wasted on buildings and heating them, they all have laptops and are able to work from home. Yeah, maybe. I just get the thing with working from home is, I don't mind it now and then, but especially for junior staff members, especially, I mean, my background is media and newspapers. If you had a junior newspaper reporter come into the office and you're mixing and rubbing shoulders and talking with veteran reporters of, say, 30, 40 years, you learn more in a 5-minute chat with them than you ever would, you know, 5 years on the job.
It is worth pointing out, though, that in the Express today, apparently there are some pretty decent figures for most government departments now. It does seem like most civil servants are getting the memo, at least. Apparently the Cabinet Office is the best, and 96% of people in the building.
Well done them. But it's the ONS who are striking, isn't it?
The ONS who are
because they don't want to come in for 2 days a week, which is, you know, come on, guys.
It's not that bad, 2 days a week, is it? Although perhaps they'd argue, we're statisticians, we can do it anywhere.
Well, that's what they say.
That's what they're saying. Do we believe it? Let us know what you think. But moving on.
Once a cheater, always a cheater. Well, not in all aspects of life, because new research apparently shows 95% of unfaithful partners would rather cheat than change their regular coffee order.
Utterly bizarre. And 86% would rather have an affair than cheat on their political party. No way. No way.
How can you cheat on your political party?
No way. Well, here to talk to us is psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Lucy, great to see you. Talk us through this.
So the research was really trying to explore this age-old conundrum, which is if you know that someone has cheated on their partner, does that mean that they could be unfaithful in all other areas of their life? So the study that's just come out, it's from Ashley Madison. They're the world's leading married dating website people. And they suggested that no, actually 90% of people are way more loyal, for example, to their political party. Although, actually, at the moment, I think there is a certain amount of promiscuity going on in terms of what might be happening at, if not the local elections, then maybe the general election, if it happens later this year. But things like whether you would be loyal to your favourite coffee, to your football team, for example. There are people who are loyal to their football team for the whole of their life.
But there's also research from that website saying that...
Ashley Madison.
Yeah, it's an affairs website, isn't it? I mean, so it says that if you are a cheater with your partner, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be disloyal in other areas of life, which I find astounding, because if you can't stay loyal to the one person that matters, how are you going to stay loyal to something, you know, trivial like a...
But that's really interesting. What people would argue that your football allegiance or your political party is not a trivial thing. But the idea that just because you are having an affair means that necessarily you are unhappy in your relationship is also another myth that needs to be busted, I think, because a lot of people have affairs. Controversial take coming up, drum roll, which is that you actually have an affair in order to stay married. It enables you to show up as a better spouse, as a less resentful parent, as someone who is not blown apart
you're honest about
by the things. What do you mean?
If
you're honest about why you're having an affair.
About the fact that you're going to have an affair, surely there needs to be a conversation if you're going to come out the other side positively.
Not necessarily.
So even if you're hiding it?
I think I gave a TED talk on infidelity, whether to stay or to go, because this is if you discover that infidelity has rocked your world, what are you actually going to do about it? And for a lot of people, the actual blowing apart of all of this information gives them a reset. It gives them an opportunity to reboot that relationship, because couples get into grooves, couples get into ruts, and they kind of miss out on communication effectively, and they don't really understand how to woo their partner or to, I suppose, do things that make them feel loved and appreciated and valued. And that's unfortunately what can often lead people
I just don't think sleeping with someone else is the remedy to that.
Maybe it is the moment at which it gets your relationship back on track.
Well, maybe, absolutely, and lots of people will attest to that. Lots of people will attest to that.
I'm sure they would have having multiple affairs. They're filling their boots.
But it's true. Couples can become more like housemates, can't they? And spend no time trying to actually take an interest in one another after.
And also, you can become very
years.
competitive in terms of how you hurt each other. Whereas actually, and actually, some interesting research from Ashley Madison maybe about 6 months ago was around the fluidity of relationships and how, for example, Ashley Madison, which, as you pointed out, is a married dating website, actually has the highest sign-ups from people who are not married. So men, for example, who are single, who want to get into a relationship but maybe not a completely committed one. And also Generation Z, people under the age of 29, they form the highest cohort of people signing up at the moment.
Men are signing up to this site.
They're single men
to meet up with married women, so there's no strings attached.
Yes.
What's the website name, sorry? I'm joking. Just kidding. Jest.
Listen to this one. 87% of those surveyed would rather cheat on their partner than on their taxes. So it's interesting, isn't it? The idea of morality. That's an interesting...
And also, there was one about whether you should cheat, quite low bar, but I think only 7% of men said that they would cheat in a race, like a sort of, dad's sports day type race.
Egg and spoon race.
11% of men said they would cheat on their psychotherapist. So I'm like, OK, how does that work? But the key thing is this overall message, which is, can you extrapolate from the fact that someone has had an affair, that somehow they're going to be untrustworthy in all areas of life? If you were working with someone and you discovered that your colleague was having an affair, would that actually change? Would it make you reappraise your interaction with them? And what this research is suggesting is that, no, you don't have to do that.
And in terms of getting over infidelity, is it worse when it's been a full-on emotional affair rather than... just a bit of
texting or something,
extracurricular activities?
No, not necessarily. And I think that goes to the individual, that in terms of what constitutes cheating is very interesting. In terms of micro-cheating, for example, would it offend you if you knew that your partner was still liking the Instagram posts of their ex, for example?
Yeah, that's cheating.
But, and is there a difference between a one-night stand and a full-blown 11-year affair with maybe some children on the side? Different people have different red lines. And that's the extraordinary thing, is that people do stay with the people who have perhaps betrayed them. But that's because by that stage, everything comes out in the open.
Absolutely.
You end up having conversations that you should have had 20 years earlier.
Really interesting.
I think it's just a real... It's a real shame. You take marriage vows... I mean, I've got zero tolerance for it. I mean, and my wife does as well, Even the one little thing, for me, that would be it. I don't...
One strike and you're out.
One strike.
One strike and you're out.
Otherwise, why take the vows? I mean, just behave yourself. Just
behave yourself.
Control yourself.
Ben's telling you to behave yourself this morning.
Or watch my TED Talk and
Thank you so much.
To get through it.
But yes,
Thank
we
you,
will
Lucy.
do. Thank you. I will actually watch that. It sounds very interesting indeed. Lucy Beresford, psychotherapist.
Right, coming up, find out who our greatest Briton is this week, and it's a very, very worthy nomination. You won't want to miss it. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel. Stick with us.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
This new hate crime bill on women's issues, you think this is the least funny April Fool's joke in history?
Yeah, although the Scottish Government and the Scottish Police do seem to be trying to make a bit of a joke of it when, you know, their campaign Hate Hurts is fronted by a hate monster who's a sort of cuddly, bright red Muppet-style thing. And some of the things that Humza Yousaf said about it were from a soft play centre over the weekend. But yeah, it's really not a joke. It's not actually clever lawyers who know the wording of the law who enforce the law. It's the police. And the police have basically not been trained on this at all. There's a 2-hour online training course they're meant to have done, and lots of them haven't already done it. And we know from the way that the police have been talking about it that they're wildly overstretching what it might actually be to be, in particular, abusive, which is one of the words in the new law, and specifically on the issue of transgender identity. To claim that just noticing the fact that there are two sexes and that sex can't change is meant to be hateful, that, you know, even after years of trying to study it, I can't understand why people hold this belief. But it's part and parcel of a pattern of legal measures that the Scottish Government has either introduced or has sought to introduce. So it tried to introduce gender self-ID, but that was overruled by Westminster because it was out of the power of the devolved government. It's still attempting to bring in a conversion therapy law, which sounds nice but isn't nice. It actually criminalises proper ethical treatment of gender-confused youngsters. They're trying to say that men who have certificates saying that they're women count as women for a particular measure to do with public boards. And then this hate crime law, which tries to make it really difficult for someone to talk in a factual, reality-based, clear, understandable way about all these measures. It all adds up to a sort of an authoritarian attempt to deny the fact that human beings are mammals and come in two sexes, and that recognising that matters for women's rights especially.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10:33. You with Ben and Emily on Saturday Morning Live. Just a very quick comment on the gbnews.com/your say. Fairy Fitzy, you've said about having affairs. Some women want their partners to go and find sex elsewhere as long as they go home and pay the bills. I've been there. We do go off sex. It becomes a chore.
Oh, my God, Ben.
Just get
Goodness
divorced.
me. Well, Meghan said, well said, Ben, why take your vows to love, cherish and be faithful?
Exactly.
It's such meaningless. And she's put a little heart and a thumbs up.
It's such a special day. You know, I got married in a church last year. It was amazing. It was, you know, you know what kind of a special day marriage is. Why then just go back on all of that as if it's like, I mean, is it worth nothing?
Such a cutie pie.
Who?
You.
Oh,
I agree. But it is now time in the show where we will reveal who our greatest Briton is. It's a person who's shown courage and bravery in the face of adversity and also can bring a sprinkle of joy to all of our lives.
Yes, and as you can see, he's on the screen now. It is His Majesty King Charles. He is to return to public duties next week after responding well to cancer treatment.
Yes, it won't yet be a full return to official engagements for the King, but the palace sound very positive, which is lovely to see. Now, we can't speak to King Charles himself today, which is a little bit of a shame, but joining us is the next best thing, really. Royal superfan Anita Atkinson. Anita, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Really great to get you on the show. So tell us, what did you make of this statement from the palace? Are you delighted?
Oh, very much so, yeah. Excited as well to see him out and about. And of course, excited for the state visit of Japan. I'm hoping to be there to see that. So, yeah, it's great news. It's brilliant news.
Anita, you've got lots of memorabilia around you, not least. That's not the King in person, is it? Or is it a cardboard cutout?
Well, it's the King in person, but don't tell anyone.
Yeah. When did you first start getting into the royals? And is it a particular affiliation with Charles himself or just the royals in general?
I'm a monarchist. You know, I'm not really a royal superfan. I support monarchies around the world. And in fact, this morning, I've just been speaking to a friend who's from here, from the northeast of England, but who actually lives in Japan. She has been a diplomat, ambassador, coach, and she was talking about the state visit of the Emperor of Japan and the whole of Japan this morning, when they've heard the news about the king, are very excited as well. So this isn't just for us. This is a world. This is world news that everyone is watching. We're waiting for the king to come out. But as for how long I've been a monarchist the whole of my life, even as a little girl. I mean, I didn't know I was a monarchist then, but I was interested in the royals and especially, of course, the Queen. So I am a monarchist and I support the monarch.
That's very interesting. So it's not just about our royal family, it's about monarchies all around the world. What is it about monarchies then? What do you think? What does it for you?
Right, well, I'll tell you what it does, but it's pretty boring. So I'll try to make it a bit more exciting. I fervently believe in a monarchy as a form of government, and the best form of government, because the countries around the world that are monarchies are the most stable and their people are free. And I've made a study of almost 50 years studying the monarchies around the world and the countries that used to be monarchies as well. And the countries that used to be monarchies, of course, have all gone through very difficult times. In fact, just on Thursday gone, it was the 50th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. And, Portugal rid themselves of their monarchy in 1910 and then became a dictatorship. So this is why I'm a monarchist. I'm not a royal superfan. I do enjoy the stories, I enjoy all the theatre that surrounds it, and I suppose all of this royal memorabilia that surrounds me. I've got the biggest collection.
Anita, what would you say to Graham? He's got in touch. He says, for goodness sake, why is it news that Charles is going back to work? He doesn't do a huge amount anyway. What would you say to someone like Graham?
He doesn't do a huge amount anywhere. He's head of state, head of the nation, head of the Commonwealth, head of the church. He's got, 2.1 billion people in the Commonwealth that he oversees, most of them non-white. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. I'll tell you what, you should have gone to live in Portugal in 1910 and then seen what a monarchy can do. It keeps you free, Graham.
Well, there you go.
That got you riled, Anita. Have you ever met any of the royals or Charles?
Well, I have, yes. The last time, I was at the coronation, of course, sleeping in the Mall. Because that's where you have to do that. I took my granddaughters and they absolutely loved camping out in London. I often tell people that the only place in the United Kingdom where you can camp for free is in the Mall. So, and I did see him there, but the last time I actually got close enough to speak to him and shake his hand was in April 2022 when he came to Bishop Auckland to open the Spanish Art Gallery with the Queen of Spain. So that was the last time I saw him. But yes,
Did you speak to him?
Yes. Yeah.
What did he say?
Well, they always do the same things, Have you come far? But I think he probably knows who I am. Yeah. Every time he comes to County Durham, of course, I'm there. Because it's my passion. I'm obsessed.
Well, that's fantastic. So, Anita, it's been so lovely to speak to you this morning, and thank you for being our greatest Briton in lieu of the man himself. Thank you very much indeed, Anita Atkinson.
Have you come
royal
far?
Superfan and monarchist. Have you come far? It's a great question.
It's like when you get into a taxi. I don't know about anyone else, but you always say, had a busy day.
Busy day.
Been a busy night.
Busy
and, the taxi driver's probably just sitting there thinking, shut up.
I think that... Quite possibly. My taxi driver this morning, he said, I'm sure you're bored of speaking to taxi drivers who are always moaning about everything, always moaning taxy drivers are. I'm going to be positive. And he really put a spring in my step this morning.
Good.
So
I love
there
that.
you go.
Yeah,
anyway.
Right, still to come. Has parenting got a million times harder now we live in a modern world? And are kids naughtier these days? I'd argue they are, but our guest who's coming up very, very shortly is giving them a lot of generous slack, which we'll be getting stuck into. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning. We have some heavy, persistent rain arriving later today, meaning tomorrow is going to be pretty wet for some of us. However, before then, it's a rather showery day for many of us today. First thing, we do have quite a bit of cloud across southern areas and some outbreaks of showery rain, pushing their way into parts of the Midlands, more central parts, as we go through the day. Across Scotland, Northern Ireland, a touch of frost first thing this morning, and then a scattering of showers developing as we head into the afternoon, and some of these could turn a little bit wintry over the higher ground. There will be some sunny spells around, but temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year. Some places staying in single figures, highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius further south. Some heavy rain then feeding into southern parts as we go through this evening, so a pretty wet end to the day here, and that rain then continuing to push further northwards overnight, feeding in across much of central southern England, into some northern parts of England, and perhaps into Wales as well first thing tomorrow morning. Towards the northwest though, some clearer skies, so again we could see a touch of frost first thing. It is going to be a wet start to the day across much of England and Wales then tomorrow, but that rain, although will be quite heavy and persistent for a time, is gradually going to clear its way northwards. Could fringe into some eastern parts of Scotland, but more western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland going to stay largely dry, and we should see some sunshine also breaking out across parts of western Wales and southwest England too. Temperatures similar to today, but obviously feeling a bit more unpleasant when it's going to be very wet.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday, the 2nd of May,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections,
we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday, the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Right, it's 10:44. Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with me, Emily, and Ben Leo. Now, you've been getting in touch on practically everything we've been talking about this morning.
Working from home, getting you riled up. Mary says working from home is inherently unfair due to the millions who don't have that same opportunity. And Robert, good morning, Robert, you say Brighton and Hove City Council, my neck of the woods, is still working from home and the service is dreadful. When you phone, you eventually get through. You can hear the TVs in the background.
And we were having an interesting conversation about infidelity, which was, Lucy Beresford. She had a few controversial things to say about how affairs can actually be good for relationships. Lots of you disagree. Druss the legend, whoever you are, Druss, he says, whatever happened to morals? Cheating is wrong in any aspect. Betraying a sacred trust, as in an intimate relationship, is the most reprehensible thing a person can do. There's never an excuse.
Yeah, and just on Rishi Sunak, we said, asked the question, has he had a good week with his policy announcements and some good social media content as well? Lee, you say Rishi Sunak will never win an election due to the way he ignored 3 million entrepreneurs and excluded us from any help during the pandemic.
It was true. The self-employed did have a tough deal there. Indeed, didn't get anything.
No.
People.
I guess people like Lee won't forget that, will they?
They won't forget that, clearly. Well, shall we move on? This is going to be an interesting one.
Yep. Has raising kids become harder than ever before? Because apparently nearly 1 in 5 teachers in England say they've been hit by a pupil this year, as more children are on course to be suspended from school than ever before. 1
in 5 teachers in England say they've been hit by a pupil this year. I mean, that is crazy. That is crazy.
Who's to blame?
But why is that? And are our teens out of control? We've also had horror stories of stabbings.
Well, we had one this week, didn't we? The one in Wales this week.
Awful, awful. Are our teens out of control? Joining us now in the studio is parenting expert Pei Yi Yang. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's get back to the basics. Are children getting naughtier?
Well, I don't think so.
No?
No, not at all. I think it's just the society is changing and their needs are changing and the people and the system around them are not changing fast enough to meet their needs. So I definitely don't think there are any...
So what does that mean exactly?
So if you're thinking about... Let's start with the society in terms of social media. Right now, they have so much access to the social media. They get to know about themselves, their rights, other young people, what they're doing. So now they have a voice and they feel more empowered to know about their rights and what they're entitled to. Back in my era, when I was a teenager, everything my parents or the teachers say goes. But now they have this...
Do you think that's a positive change, though?
I actually think it's a positive change. And I think it's to really think about what lens are you seeing through the teenagers' behaviour. And if you're thinking the children, teenagers... If you're saying the teenage children's behaviour is getting naughtier, I think we're placing the blame on the teenagers. But the problem is...
Well, one in 5 kids have been found to hit a teacher, physically strike out.
Or 1 in 5 teachers have been hit.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's no excuse because the world's changing around them.
Absolutely, there's no excuse, but we need to think about the organisational context and the pressure the teachers are going through, and also the curriculum the teachers, when they went through the training, is there enough training, adequate training to teach them how to manage the difficulties, the changing needs of these young children?
So are you blaming you're blaming the teachers for
I am not blaming the teachers.
In class?
No, I'm not blaming the teachers getting hit in class, Ben. What I'm saying, the teachers are under a lot of pressure. There's not enough support for them to support the changing needs of the children. I would imagine there'll be increasing pupils in class, right? And then the children, there are a lot of neurodivergent children. The needs are they know about what they are, who they are, what they want to become. But there's no curriculum for the teachers when they're going through training to say, right, these are the parts you need to think about. How do you meet these children's needs? How do you build a relationship with them?
I think that's true, but anecdotally, from my experience, I mean, we've all been children, it was the children it was my friends who had strong discipline from their parents who were actually happier. Because they had boundaries, they knew expectations, they knew that if they stuck by the rules, things would be OK. It's when parents take a completely lax approach that children get into trouble. Surely there needs to be more discipline rather than less.
I think we are going through one extreme to another extreme. It's a balance of needs. Right? When I say the children's evolving needs are changing, it doesn't mean we don't put discipline in place. There needs to be boundary. Actually, the research has shown young people want boundaries and they need boundaries to feel safe because they're going through a lot of changes just now in physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and it can be really overwhelming for them. So they need that boundary to feel safer for them. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of influences in the system around the young person that is changing the needs. So then we need to think about how do we influence the people around them to support the young people to thrive in the education system.
I think if I'm lucky enough to have a child, I think I'll probably be quite strict.
You have to be, but you also have to be...
I grew up with, I'm your mum, not your friend.
Well, I don't quite agree with that. I think you have to be strict, but also you have to be a loving parent as well. I mean, I'm the parent of 2 young boys, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but the kids whose parents are very slack and mollycoddle them and say, if they kick off and have a tantrum, they say, oh, no, come on, no, it's fine, no, come on, sweetheart, let's get in the car. Those kids behave the worst out of any other children I've met, and they continually do it because the kids know that the parents are lightweights and they get away with it.
Yeah, you do. You can be both, Ben. You can be a loving parent, but also putting boundaries in place. And I think a lot of parents think I have to be either or. If I have to be that strict parent, so then I can't give in to my children. And there's never the perspective I'll be encouraging my parents who I work with to think about. It can be both. How you do it.
My 4-year-old refused to go to nursery for the first time ever. I was there last week or the week before, and we had this big sort of furore, and he was kicking and screaming. We tried physically putting him in the car, and he was just writhing around and being a nuisance. So I said, OK, don't go to nursery, but you're going to go home and you're going to sit in your room all day. We took away all his toys, no TV, no sweets, no chocolate, no treats, nothing. And for the whole day, of course we fed him. He came down for lunch and of course we did that. But the whole day, he was peering out his bedroom window, looking into the garden whilst I jet washed the patio. And do you know what he said the next day? He said, sorry, I regret doing that. I regret my behaviour. I'll go to nursery. And, you've got to discipline kids. You just can't...
Did you use the word regret?
We had a chat and I said, how did that make you feel yesterday, all that commotion? And he said, I felt sad. I wish I didn't do it.
Ben, can I ask, did you ask your wee boy why he didn't want to go to nursery?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, he says he doesn't. He said he didn't quite know. I think there's one of our friends worked at the nursery who just quit, and he was very close to her, so maybe it was because of that. But
trials and tribulations.
You can't let kids get away with stuff like that because they'll just take an inch and go a mile.
Ben, you just highlight something so important here is the emotions I'm asking you about. I was asking you about why did your wee boy didn't want to go to school?
Yeah.
And it's the same for teenagers. There's a lot of feelings coming through, and it's that emotions you need to attend to be able to go, right, what's going on here? How are you feeling? And you will find that actually really reassure a lot of young people. And I think the teacher, because they're so stressed, there's so many kids in class. How do you manage 35 or 40 kids' emotions?
I want to go back to what you said at the start because you talked about how it's potentially a good thing that children speak in terms of their rights.
Yeah.
And they talk about, just that point, really, because that's quite difficult, isn't it? Because children will come across sometimes as rather entitled and they don't know more about the world than their parents and they don't know what the right thing to do is in certain situations. Surely that guidance has to come from the parent rather than the child. The child should not be telling their parent what they should be doing.
Of course not. I'm not saying the parents listen to everything their children were saying or detect how the household should be like or how they behave in school. What I'm saying is the children now learn about how they feel, what their rights are, and they have a voice to talk about what can influence their life, affect their life. But that means the parents and the people around them start learn to listen. But that doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it's simply listening to what their perspectives are. And equally for the parents, you want your teenager to be listening to your perspective. Why am I putting the boundaries in place here? Why can't you go to party till 12 o'clock at night when you're only 13 years old, right? There's a different perspective here. It's about their listening.
Also, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember who it was talking, a psychologist, I think, saying how social media is just making children and teenagers so anxious, so worried, depressed, and really causing a lot of disruption.
There was research out, was it this week or last week, about how children as young as 3 are on social media and using smartphones. And I think the percent, what percent was it of 5 to 7-year-olds? Something like 40%, which was I mean, I argue that adults shouldn't be on social media like that, let alone, you know, vulnerable kids whose minds are like sponges.
Absolutely. There needs to be boundaries in place. And this is one area the parents always ask is how do we boundaries the use of social media? Because it does affect you. And like you said, Ben, we're adults. I could be like in my bed, just want to watch one puppy video. And then later, 2 hours later, I'm still watching puppy videos.
I think they call it doom scrolling, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but definitely the social media has a lot of influence on the young people. But then again, it's coming to educate your young person, you know, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, what the boundaries are, how do you stay safe and be inspired by those who inspire you and, you know, avoid those, like...
Yes, if social media was another addictive product, if it was an addictive substance, you know, you would not allow children to have it. But for some reason, social media is socially acceptable.
But there's a reason all the social media bosses, Mark Zuckerberg and someone, don't let their kids on their own product. It's because it's toxic to their brains.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Really great to speak to you. We've got lots more coming up on the show, including our Showbiz selection.
Looking forward to that. Yeah, definitely. And, a great story about Declan Rice. Steve with us. Back in a sec.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. We have some heavy, persistent rain arriving later today, meaning tomorrow's going to be pretty wet for some of us. However, before then, it's a rather showery day for many of us today. First thing, we do have quite a bit of cloud across southern areas and some outbreaks of showery rain pushing their way into parts of the Midlands, more central parts, as we go through the day. Across Scotland, Northern Ireland, a touch of frost first thing this morning, and then a scattering of showers developing as we head into the afternoon, and some of these could turn a little bit wintry over the higher ground. There will be some sunny spells around, but temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year. Some places staying in single figures, highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius further south. Some heavy rain then feeding into southern parts as we go through this evening, so a pretty wet end to the day here, and that rain then continuing to push further northwards overnight, feeding in across much of central southern England, into some northern parts of England and perhaps into Wales as well first thing tomorrow morning. Towards the northwest though, some clearer skies, so again we could see a touch of frost first thing. It is going to be a wet start to the day across much of England and Wales then tomorrow, but that rain, although will be quite heavy and persistent for a time, is gradually going to clear its way northwards. Could fringe into some eastern parts of Scotland, but more western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland going to stay largely dry, and we should see some sunshine also breaking out across parts of western Wales and southwest England too. Temperatures similar to today, but obviously feeling a bit more unpleasant when it's going to be very wet.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday the 2nd of May,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel. If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo alongside Emily Carver, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
It is fantastic to have your company this morning. We have got an action-packed hour ahead of us.
Yes, we've got all of the day's top stories with author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns.
We have indeed, and a royal return. Relief across the nation as the King is to resume public duties after a positive response to cancer treatment.
Elsewhere, lazy civil servants. They've been asked to return to the office for just 2 days a week. Yes, you got that right, 2 days a week. But they're refusing and instead going on strike. Should they get the sack as a result?
And stamp out spiking. That's what Apprentice star Ryan Mark Parsons is urging after he was drugged and held hostage during a night out in Soho. He joins us later in the show to discuss what turned out to be a horror of an evening.
Sounds like a night to forget for Ryan.
Well, maybe he won't. His memory will probably be a bit fuzzy if he was spiked, but we'll be hearing all about the details on that one. I think he's got a policy pledge. He's campaigning for a change in government policy to do with spiking.
I think he wants glasses or drinks that are served in bars to have special lids on so they can't be reopened or tampered with.
Well, there we go. We'll find out how widespread this problem actually is. But we want to hear from you too. Let us know what you think. Send your views and post your comments visiting gbnews.com/your say. Ben's always there, ready to type a reply, aren't you?
Yeah. I need to stop getting so involved. I like responding to your comments. But look,
Why not?
Yeah, I don't know. Dangerous game. But before we do anything else, here's your news headlines with Tatiana.
Ben, thank you very much. The top stories this hour. A major rescue operation is underway after a small boat carrying up to 50 migrants ran aground on a sandbank off the Kent coast. GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White has more.
Well, this migrant boat ran aground on Goodwin Sands, which is a notorious sandbank a few miles off the Kent coast near Deal. The Coast Guard helicopter and several lifeboats have been involved in this rescue, including some smaller rigid inflatable lifeboats have been ferrying the migrants from that sandbank to the larger lifeboats. This boat that ran aground is one of 4 migrant boats that made it into UK waters today as the people smuggling gangs take advantage of a change in the weather to push these flimsy boats out into the English Channel in the hope of making it to the UK.
A British tourist is in intensive care after being attacked by a shark on a Caribbean island. The 64-year-old is receiving critical care after serious injuries to his left arm, his left leg and stomach, according to a local official. He is said to be doing well and is stable at this time. The attack happened at Turtle Beach along Great Corlin Bay in Trinidad and Tobago yesterday morning. Several beaches along the northwestern coast of the island have been closed. The Foreign Office says it's supporting the victim's family. Labour has warned the cost of Tory chaos is hitting businesses hard, with new analysis from the party revealing just over 1 million businesses report economic uncertainty as the #1 factor impacting their turnover. The analysis comes as the Prime Minister and other senior Tories come under scrutiny for claiming that the economy is turning a corner. Shadow Minister for Industry and Decarbonisation Sarah Jones told GB News the instability within the Conservative Party is the reason for struggling businesses across the country.
First Parliament in history, this Parliament, to see a fall in living standards, and we've got the lowest business investment in the G7. These are decisions that have consequences that the government is making. Rishi Sunak told us this week that we turned a corner, but of course prices are still rising and we're still in recession. And when he changes his ministers every 5 minutes, is embroiled in internal battles the whole time. We've had ministers out this morning in the papers saying that backbenchers shouldn't revolt against Rishi. When you have that level of chaos in central government, of course it has an impact on businesses.
A pro-Palestine march that could attract hundreds of thousands of protesters is to take place in London today, as police say the risk of disorder is not high enough to ban it. The march, organised by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, is set to begin at Parliament Square at midday and end at Hyde Park, where speeches will then be given. The protest group says the event is in response to Israel's brutal attack on Gaza. This march will be its 13th national protest since the first was staged on October 9th. Meanwhile, a demonstration organised by the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism was due to take place today, but that has been cancelled. The organisation said the Walk Together event had received threats and identified hostile actors who posed a risk to the safety of Jews. The King is to return to public duties with his medical team, saying they're very encouraged by the progress made in his cancer treatment. A palace spokesperson says King Charles is greatly encouraged to be resuming some public-facing duties and very grateful to his medical team. Buckingham Palace says His Majesty and Queen Camilla will visit a cancer treatment centre on Tuesday to meet medical specialists and patients. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also welcomed the news, posting on X that it was brilliant news to end the week. Former royal correspondent Charles Ray told us the good news gives so many others, especially cancer sufferers, much hope.
The fact that he has produced this news, this great news, gives hope to so many other cancer sufferers as well, as it did when he first announced in February that he has got cancer. And we know that the very first thing he's going to do is on Tuesday, he's going to a cancer treatment centre where he's going to be meeting medics and people who are being treated for cancer. Again, this will be great for people who are suffering from this dreadful disease.
And a gold pocket watch that was recovered from the body of the richest man on the Titanic will be auctioned today in Wiltshire. It could fetch £150,000. Businessman John Jacob Astor, who was 47 when went down with the ship in 1912 after seeing new wife Madeline onto a lifeboat. Rather than try his luck with another lifeboat, the impeccably dressed businessman, a prominent member of the wealthy Astor family, was last seen smoking a cigarette and chatting with a fellow passenger. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's over to Ben and Emily.
Hello, welcome back. 11:07, you're with Ben and Emily on Saturday Morning Live on GB News. Some good news on this gloomy Saturday. The King is to return to public duties next week after responding well to cancer treatment.
He is indeed. It won't yet be a full return to official engagements for the King, but the Palace sound rather optimistic.
They do. They've said, quote, His Majesty's medical team are very encouraged by the progress made so far and remain positive about the King's continued recovery.
Well, joining us now is the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, it's been a bit of a tricky year, let's say, for the King and the royal family. Is this the good news they needed?
This is certainly the beginning of what I hope will be a series of announcements, all of which I think that we're all hoping will be good news. It's very encouraging. Obviously, looking ahead, they very, very carefully balance the statements because naturally his medical team must approve. But if you look forward, for example, next week's engagement on Tuesday to a cancer care centre, I mean, this is very important. And as has been pointed out in the news headlines, I mean, one of the things this does is it does give hope to millions who are suffering from this dreadful disease or affected by it in some way. Rather the same sort of line, for example, when he talked of his prostrate condition, and that led to more awareness. But there's no doubt also that we're looking towards anniversaries, the birthday parade, Royal Ascot, and then, of course, the intended visit of the Emperor and Empress of Japan. And hopefully things will be back as near to normal as could reasonably be hoped in the circumstances.
Yes, Richard, I have felt fairly sorry for the King because he's waited all his life to take the throne, and then within a year he, gets a bit of ill health. There was some interesting colour in the Times this morning saying that the King's hobbies, such as walking and gardening, have kept him in a positive frame of mind. So during his treatment at Sandringham in Norfolk, he's understood to have enjoyed time overseeing the progress of a health garden on the West Lawn, a project he started before his diagnosis, and he's been growing 5,000 healing yew tree hedging plants, and 4,000 herbaceous plants and bulbs specifically chosen for their health benefits, such as lavender. He's always been a keen gardener, hasn't he, the King?
Well, he has. Very keen on his garden at Highgrove too, of course, famously. And as we know, he's a workaholic. And we know from his nephew, Peter Phillips, that he's found the recent, some 3 months now since the diagnosis of cancer, terribly frustrating. He's continued, of course, with the essential duties as head of state, seeing the Prime Minister, signing bills into law and so forth. But obviously he's not been able to undergo or to take up royal engagements. And now we're hoping for something different. And of course, let's spare a thought for Queen Camilla. She's been his rock. She stood in for him, and there's no question she's handled it terribly well. Also, the palace have kept us informed, and that's very important. It's essential since he's head of state.
Yes, and it's essential considering just how many rumours there are all the time about the King's health, about the health of other members of the royal family. So it's great to hear from the palace itself to make sure we are up to date. I think it needs to happen in this day of social media. But thank you, Richard. We'll have to leave it there. Richard Fitzwilliams, who, of course, is a royal commentator. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday morning.
Thank you, Richard. Now, let's look at the top stories of the day with our top panel, author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and founder of the Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Shall we talk about... what do you want to do first? The civil servants? Yeah.
You guys want to
So, basically, look, I cannot believe this story. So, civil servants from the ONS specifically, they've been ordered to come back into work, into a physical office in Whitehall, I suspect, for 2 days a week. The rest of the time, they can work from home. Fine, no problem. But because they've been ordered in for 2 days a week, they're now going on strike. They're saying, we're not having it. We shouldn't be in the office at all. This is a joke, isn't it, Nikki?
Well, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago because it's been brewing for a while and they're now promising to be on the picket lines. I am a bit confused by it because I don't really see how they can resist. Because in any other job, and definitely in the private sector in which I've worked for years, you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd just be fired, actually, if you didn't turn up consistently. I mean, I know that, for example, recently we've had this, we've got flexible working is now enshrined in law. You can ask for it from the first day you go to work.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have it approved necessarily. No. Your boss still has the right to say no if it doesn't suit the business, whatever business that is. I kind of get the impression that there's more going on here, actually, and there's more that they're irritated about. I wouldn't be surprised at all if on the days that they strike, they present some kind of list of requirements that they now have about work. This is the headline, but there's more going on. And actually, there's another story in the paper about the number of sick days that civil servants take off. And it's quite counterintuitive because it's the highest it's been since 1995. It's 1.3% higher than the private sector. But the people that are taking the days off are the oldest civil servants, not the youngest, and it's for mental health reasons.
That's very interesting, because we talk a lot about how younger people are finding it tough and going into work and are taking lots of time off work and lots of people on benefits related to mental health. But the government are saying that actually it's looking pretty good in government departments at the moment. Lots of people are back into the office. These orders do seem to be working on the whole. Are these ONS workers perhaps on their own here now?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, 1,000 ONS workers, if you think about how many people work in the civil service, it's quite a lot. 1,000 is quite a small majority. Clearly, as you say, there's probably more going on. And actually, a lot of people always say, oh, young workers, they're lazy, they don't do enough, they always strike. And actually, it's probably the majority of young workers that are worried about losing their job. They're probably not going to strike, actually. So, let's be clear, the older workers that are a little bit more difficult, they've got their routine, they're probably the people that are going to be striking here. The younger workers are scared about losing their job. They're going to come in. And 1,000 is, let's not get carried away here. I do think that the whole of the civil service are not going to strike.
Well, Rishi Sunak, of course, he's pledged to axe 70,000 civil service jobs to fund the Defence Boost Bonanza. Some would argue that these civil servants have become a law upon themselves in recent years, briefing against ministers, making it hard work for people like Dominic Raab. I mean, he was accused of being a bully, but others would say that he just had high standards and the civil service were a bunch of snowflakes.
Yeah, but the one thing about the civil service is, yes, they're meant to keep their political views out of the physical work that they do and the reports they produce. But actually, if they've got different opinions and different intelligence, they should share that. Because actually, if you're in government, what you want is always the opposing view, and then you work backwards from that.
If you've got a right-of-centre government who's trying to get, right-of-centre policies through, but you've got a civil service who are, left or even far left, activists even, that we've seen stories in recent years, how's the country meant to operate?
But if you've got a government that's trying to break the law routinely, as they did under Boris Johnson, then actually they're in the perfect position to push back on that and just advise them, actually, if you do that, it's illegal.
What they can't do is block. And there is evidence that they have tried to do that, particularly in the Home Office in recent years. The 72,000 jobs that are going to be got rid of in the civil service. I do wonder if there are 72,000 jobs that can just be chopped to fund defence spending. Then why do we even have those jobs going? We're all paying for it, of course.
Well, one man who wanted...
Lots of people will disagree with that.
One man who has ordered the civil service to get back into work in recent years, of course, Jacob Rees-Mogg of this parish, he put notes on their desks and said, looking forward to seeing you back in the office very soon.
He of the sleeping in Parliament.
Only once.
Absolutely, no, but only once. Doesn't matter. It's once too many. In any other job, you'd be fired if you were sleeping on the job, quite literally.
You can get late, you know, late at night with those votes back.
No, don't your bus driver falling asleep. No,
exactly.
But we have a story about Jacob Rees-Mogg because he's been harassed. Should we have a little watch?
So I think he was giving a speech at the University of Cardiff, and upon leaving, we can see there pro-Palestine protesters bearing flags, getting a bit rowdy and surrounding him as he made his way out into a car. I mean, for me, this is far too much. It's unsightly scenes. You don't want to see your politicians subjected to this kind of hounding. Make your argument, of course, but this brings into question their safety, doesn't it, Alex?
Yeah, it does. And I have to say, I do feel for Jacob Rees-Mogg. You know, there's been quite a few situations. I mean, weirdly, actually, it's always university campuses. You know, it doesn't happen anywhere else. But, you know, I feel for him because there's been some events where he's been even with his children and he's been harassed. And I think people have got to be able to make their views in a calm way. You know, you can't be jumping on the car. I know people are upset about things, but there's a much better way than making a guy feel really intimidated. And, you know, he's there to make a speech. If you don't agree, protest, but don't almost like... I think there was some people there that were trying to almost hit him.
Yeah,
it's like, it's not
that
acceptable.
way, Nikki, but it's also Labour politicians too that are on the receiving end of this. Angela Rayner gets screamed and shouted at by pro-Palestinian protesters and other activists on the far left, I think.
I mean, just being an MP is a very dangerous job these days. They're so public-facing, they're so available to the public. You know, they don't have the kind of protection that celebrities have, but actually sometimes they have almost equivalent followings on social media, very well known. You know, obviously we had the terrible murder of Joe Cox, which is almost impossible to get over. And it's like, I don't really see how we get around this problem apart from them stepping back. And the whole point is that they can't step back because then they're not in touch with the people. Do you see what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, I think the kind of constituency question is really interesting. Obviously, there was the murder of David Amos. You remember that? Again, somebody that came to his constituency and killed him there. I don't know what we do to protect them other than kind of move that element further back. I mean, does Jacob Rees-Mogg need extra police protection? Don't know. Maybe he does.
No, I don't know if this upsets Jacob. I'd like to speak to him about it, actually, and ask him...
I think he takes it in good spirit.
He's
thick-skinned, isn't
he seems to, and he believes in freedom of speech, and he believes you should be able to protest, and he believes you should be able to come up and talk to a politician. But I do wonder when it's so mob-like.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said...
He must feel, you know, sore from it.
And actually, people watching that will be put off going into politics. That's the issue, right? They'll be thinking, I want to stand, but I don't want to have to walk down the street and almost be worried that I'm going to be... It's happened to Michael Gove. I think he was going to get a prep, and so he got mobbed. I mean, it puts people off, and you've got to be able to make your opinion without mobbing someone.
It happened to Wes Streeting just 2 nights ago when he was making his way into Question Time. There was a video doing the rounds on Twitter, X, again, pro-Palestine protesters. I've always made the argument that, actually, this is probably a very unpopular opinion, but I think MPs need to be paid more than they are.
I agree.
I know they just had a pay rise, but if you want... the best people for the job, the most competent people, and I'd argue we've got, you know, a lot of really incompetent MPs at the moment.
Very average.
But if you want the best people, you need to pay them top-tier money, and also you need to entice them to put up with rubbish like that.
Well, actually, do you know what I would do? This is really radical. I would make it like jury service. I would just kind of spin the wheel and make everybody randomly an MP. And then spot them to do it.
That is absolute madness, Nikki. That is absolute madness.
What a bombshell.
What on earth would our policy agenda look like?
It'd be like jury service, though, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be any different to that. So.
Well, you know what? It's a fun idea.
Us four would be in the cabinet, I think.
Perhaps we could get views on that. If you at home perhaps have a view on that, should we have MPs like jury service? It's a duty. It should be seen as a duty.
It's a civic duty. Why not? You could just do it for a year. I don't know. Give them this 4 years maybe to stand.
Nothing would get done.
Well, maybe 4 years then. 4 years would be enough.
An issue for Prime Minister.
if we thought this lot were bad, imagine how bad it would be doing that.
I mean, would, you know, just doing that, would it be any worse?
I'd argue not.
There you go, then.
Perhaps that's harsh. A lot of our politicians, you know, have worked hard to be where they are.
There are some good politicians, but
I
don't think a lot of them would get jobs in any decent corporate company in the city or, you know.
I think that's true, actually. You know, we always say, oh, you know, they could be earning the big bucks in the city. I'm not sure all of them could. Anyway, thank you so much, Nikki and Alex.
Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to be speaking to the Apprentice star, Ryan Mark Parsons, who was held hostage on a night out after his drink was spiked. It's a shocking story. Stay with us.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
So, J. Cole, who is a rapper, says that he felt terrible after releasing a song aimed at fellow rapper Kendrick Lamar and vowed to pull the track off streaming services. He said, "I ain't gonna lie to y'all. The past 2 days felt terrible," he told an audience at the Dreamville Festival in North Carolina. "I damn near had a relapse," he said.
There's a lot of young people, especially, you know, that would look at that and they will take it not just as entertainment.
It doesn't happen in any other form of art that I can think of. This is not happening in country music, is it?
Well, it's the same. It's the same problem in both cases, isn't it? Who's doing the regulating? And surely it's each case on its merits, isn't it? You don't just ban a genre.
Why is there such a lot of hatred for a man who usually would have trash talked back to stand up and say, you know, this doesn't sit well with me and I love this guy? If we look at, I think his name was Cody Fisher, the semi-professional footballer who died in a club because someone stabbed him. Now, he was stabbed because he stepped on someone's trainers. This is the level of ego we're seeing from a lot of young men who don't have any output of being able to channel that energy, and a lot of it is stemming from cultures like football, hip-hop, these sorts of things. So I'm just saying it's refreshing to see a man who could have easily wiped the floor with his lyrics say, I don't have to, you know?
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I took this into the wrong direction. It's not about pointing out the areas of concern. Actually, this story is saying, look, music and art can be giving you an example of how to live a slightly better life.
That's free speech. Saying, sorry. I'm sorry, I choose not to fight back because I love you. It may look like a wimpy thing to do, but it's still free speech.
You know what? I love you, Paul. Sorry about earlier.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
Right, welcome back. It's 11:24 in the morning, and of course, this is Saturday Morning Live. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch. We had a conversation a little bit earlier about parenting, because 1 in 5 teachers in England have been...
outrageous. Been hit.
Been hit.
Been struck in the classroom. And actually, I know, I was going to share a story, but it'll give away... People know where I live, so it'll give things away. But
we don't want to reveal your location. No, not on your home.
There was an incident in a nursery somewhere with kids and teachers.
Oh, gosh, throwing food at them, possibly.
Yep.
Debbie says, when my parents disciplined me like they did, I never loved them any less, and I didn't go out and slap someone else because they did it to me. That's called respect. I learnt.
Exactly. That's my big irk. People blame bad behaviour on things that have happened to them. They say, oh, I've had a bad childhood, or this person did this thing to me, so I'm going to behave like this. It's like, no, display the behaviour you would want to, receive. It's just don't...
Ben has absolutely no sympathy.
Don't be a victim. Don't,
I think you're quite right. And Mark says, on the whole, children don't realise that their parents have been a child too and made mistakes along the way with wanting the best for their kids. Children are not young adults. They need educating. Yes, I do think the authority has to come from the parent.
Always.
Children always banging on about their rights.
And Stuart's...
My human right.
My human rights. Stuart says, years ago, my daughter, who was 5 at the time, threw herself to the floor, kicking and screaming in a shop. So I did the same. As soon as I did, she stopped. I have no shame.
No, that's
Very
creative.
funny. Nice idea.
That is creative parenting. I love that. No
Very
embarrassment.
good.
No embarrassment. Just do it.
Just one on civil servants. Mary says, these civil servants, we pay your wages, get to work, no ifs, no buts, just a lazy bunch who think they have the right to dictate to the taxpayer. Sack them all. Say what you really think, Mary.
Yeah. Although the older ONS statisticians are pretty good, actually. I like their work.
Yeah. Well, they've just changed the formula for excess deaths, which a lot of people weren't happy with, but there we go.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe
always something.
Maybe they were doing it from a coffee shop somewhere, so...
always something. Shall we move on? Shall we move on? Because our next guest is a star of The Apprentice, Ryan Mark Parsons, and he's been through a pretty traumatic experience.
Yes, and we're not talking about facing Lord Sugar in the boardroom either, so this is quite serious. On a night out in Soho, he was spiked and held hostage in his attacker's car, and he's now campaigning to make drink covers mandatory in all bars and nightclubs in Britain to ensure it doesn't happen again.
Well, Ryan joins us now on the sofa. Ryan, tell us a little bit about what happened to you on this night out.
Yeah, so it happened last year, thoroughly traumatic. I've only spoken about it this year. I did an interview with the Daily Mirror, and I just explained exactly what happened. And in a nutshell, I've come on the channel before to speak about it, but I went to a nightclub in Soho and I momentarily left my drink to the side, returned pretty much instantly, and then suddenly I just got this horrible feeling just overcame me. And it was complete delirium. I had to go back to the loo to sit down. I had a pounding headache. And then a symptom of spiking is complete memory fragmentation, and I just can't piece together exactly what happened. I mean, my memory was just so foggy. I can't remember leaving the club. I remember hurting my leg. And then the next part of my memory that night was I ended up in a car and I couldn't leave the vehicle. And again, a part of the symptoms of spiking is that you lose all fear and rationality, and I was just screaming at... I'm not sure if it was the perpetrator in the car, but this person wouldn't let me leave, and it just escalated. I was able to get out, thank goodness, but I had no fear whatsoever. I mean, this is what I said to the reporter from the Mirror. I could have easily have jumped into the Thames. There was, no fear.
So were they speaking to you, this person?
Well, yeah, they were speaking to me, but
what were they saying?
I can't remember what they were saying. I mean, it's just so dazed. It's very, like I said, fragmented recollection of what happened.
And you don't know who he was?
Don't know who he was, and I didn't report it because I thought, what is actually going to be the result of reporting it? And since then, I've now...
Do you regret not reporting it?
Well, yeah, I regret not reporting it because the reports help the enforcement against spiking. And that's essential to reduce the incidence of spiking that's taking place around the UK. And I was looking into stats in 2023, 6,700 reports were received by the police. But in order to get a successful prosecution, you need to get tested, ideally within 12 hours, which is such a short time span.
There has been a growing trend of people waking up the next morning after a night out and saying, I feel so bad and I don't remember anything. I swear I had 2 or 3 drinks, which normally is OK for me. I fear I may have been spiked, but they'd never know, would they?
You'd never know. And again, that's the trouble we're having here, is that you need to get tested, because if the CPS have any chance of prosecuting someone that might have committed the spiking offence, they need the evidence. And the only official route to get testing is the police testing. And that, like I said, the drugs can actually leave the body within 12 hours. You can theoretically get tested within 7 days because there might be a presence of drugs in the body up to 7 days. But it's crucial
That's very
to get the
interesting.
testing.
I hadn't heard about that at all, the process of actually finding out what's been in your body. In terms of, you're a man.
Yes.
And we often talk about spiking in terms of particularly young women getting spiked on nights out by predatorial men. We don't talk about it as much when it comes to men, but do you believe it's just as prevalent?
Well, in terms of the numbers, recent stats would suggest that it's a majority of women. I think around 74% of reported cases involve women. And yes, it is a majority. It's an issue affecting the majority. Women is the majority. But again, it can happen to anyone, and that's what I like to stress.
Perhaps men are less likely to report it, maybe out of embarrassment, or they just don't see it potentially in the same way as young women. I don't know.
Well, I speak to a lot of friends, and a lot of male friends, and they've come forward to me since I've spoken about this, and they've said that they've been spiked, but because there's a certain stigma, I would say, attached to men reporting spiking incidents, they're not coming forwards. That might suggest why the stats are reflecting women coming forwards in the majority. But this is why I'm wanting to speak out about it. This is why I'm working with the amazing Greg Smith, who's the MP for Buckingham. And we're working on this campaign to ensure that people can go to clubs or can go to bars or pubs or wherever it is, any place that serves alcohol, and feel safe.
Practically, how is that done? I think you want to introduce drinks covers, don't you? So how does that work? Is it a device that goes on top of a glass? How does it work?
Yeah, so I've been to lots of clubs and bars, and I've used these covers, which are made out of aluminium, and they're disposable. So they've got an adhesive size. You can stick it on top of the glass, and then it just covers the drink. And you also know if it's been tampered with. And at the moment, I've been going casually to different venues that serve alcohol. A lot of venues in London where I've been going haven't actually got these covers. And what I'm working with Greg Smith on is to make sure that these covers are provided across the country, and it's mandatory as a condition of the licensing. If a venue is able to serve alcohol, they need to have these covers.
So you're not going to force everyone, every pub and every bar across the country to make their clients use these.
No.
It's just to have it on offer.
On offer, exactly. So
I support that, I think.
It won't be obligatory for people to use it, but obviously it's great to have the option, because I just want to make sure that if you're going drinking, you can feel safe. And at the moment, Greg is negotiating with the Tory whip to see if he can get a 10-minute rule bill in the Commons, and if that does happen then, and if that is successful, it could get a first reading, and then we could see some traction and perhaps changes to legislation. So that's what I'm working on, and I'm going to keep charging forward with Greg to see some, hopefully, changes to the law.
All right, Ryan, listen, really sorry to hear about your nightmare experience, and well done for speaking out about it and all your work, trying to help others too. That's Ryan Mark Parsons.
Thank you.
Yeah, stay safe. Lots more to come, including Ellie Phillips with lots of Showbiz exclusives, but on to your news first with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, thank you. The top stories this hour. A major rescue operation is underway after a small boat carrying up to 50 migrants ran aground on a sandbank on Goodwin Sands off the Kent coast. The 10-mile-long sandbank is a notorious shipping hazard that's led to the loss of many lives and vessels over the years. GB News has been told that a large group of migrants have left their boat and are now standing on the sandbank waiting to be rescued. It's one of 4 small boats carrying migrants which have crossed into UK waters this morning. A British tourist is in intensive care after being attacked by a shark on a Caribbean island. The 64-year-old is receiving critical care after serious injuries to his left arm, his left leg and stomach, according to a local official. He's said to be stable and doing well. The attack happened at Turtle Beach along Great Corlin Bay in Trinidad and Tobago yesterday morning. The Foreign Office says it's supporting the victim's family. A pro-Palestine march that could attract hundreds of thousands of protesters is to take place in London today as police say the risk of disorder is not high enough to ban it. The march, organised by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, is set to begin at Parliament Square in around 25 minutes' time and end at Hyde Park. The protest group says the event is in response to Israel's brutal attack on Gaza. Meanwhile, a demonstration organised by the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism was due to take place today, but that has been cancelled. Organisers said the safety of Jews was at risk following threats made. And the King is to return to public duties, with his medical team saying they're very encouraged by the progress made in his cancer treatment. A palace spokesperson says King Charles is greatly encouraged to be resuming some public-facing duties and very grateful to his medical team. Buckingham Palace says His Majesty and Queen Camilla will visit a cancer treatment centre on Tuesday to meet medical specialists and patients. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also welcomed the news, posting on X that it was brilliant news to end the week. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
On to another controversial character, this time Prince Harry. He's back in the headlines after a High Court judge ruled he must pay 90% of the Home Office legal costs for the case regarding the downgrading of his security.
And it could cost him in excess of £1 million. But he says he is determined to fight on. Let's speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a pretty hefty bill, Eamon. This all dates back, if you think, to 2020, when he stood back as a working member of the royal family. The Home Office downgraded his security, essentially, because he is no longer a working member of the royal family. Prince Harry argued that his family could not be safe in the UK. He also alleged that a paparazzi chased his car after the World Child Awards in 2021 when he came back to the UK. He sued the Home Office because his lawyers argued that he'd been singled out and treated less favourably than others in his position. In February, the High Court ruled that the decision to change his security was not unlawful or irrational, and they were entitled, the Home Office, to take the decision they did. Then yesterday, Prince Harry lost his initial bid to appeal that ruling from the High Court, and the judge ordered him to pay 90% of the Home Office's costs. But the judge agreed to a modest reduction, but that was only a 10% reduction, which is why we've got this 90% figure. But Prince Harry is going to directly appeal. So he does have the money to pursue these legal cases. He also has a couple of cases against various newspaper groups in the United Kingdom, and he sees it as his life's mission, really, to hold people to account, including the Home Office. But by doing that, he's also potentially bringing a bit of a hefty cost to us as a taxpayer, because this is the Home Office, who clearly is funded by taxpayers, and they're having to fork out this legal money. If Prince Harry wins the appeal, then us as taxpayers are out of pocket.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:38 in the morning. Lots of you have been getting in touch about those protesters on that student university campus harassing Jacob Rees-Mogg. We're going to get to those very shortly, but first...
a business in the West Midlands has been officially handed its King's Award for Enterprise in a ceremony at their factory yesterday. And the award is the highest official UK honour for British business, aiming to promote both small and large enterprises.
Yes, our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, has the story for us.
For a business in the UK, it's the highest accolade achievable, and the West Midlands is not afraid to make its mark. At a ceremony at their factory in Smethwick, the Lord Lieutenant of the West Midlands, Sir John Crabtree OBE, presented the team at Remedy Health with the prestigious King's Award for Enterprise in the Innovation category.
We recognise the outstanding achievement of the said award recipient
as demonstrated in the application of innovation in our United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, our Channel Islands and our Isle of Man, and wishing to show our royal favour, confer upon it the King's Award for Enterprise Innovation.
The prize aims to reward both small and large businesses with an innovative product or service and recognise their contribution to enterprise, with last year being the first awarded by His Majesty King Charles. Remedy Health and their Nourished brand won the award for their 3D printed, customisable nutritional gummies. The business has developed and innovated to be able to combine 7 different active ingredients into one daily personalised stack. Customers can choose their favourite vitamins and supplements, and at their factory in Birmingham, they'll 3D print the selection on demand. Award-winning female entrepreneur Melissa Snover is the brains behind the business. She describes what it means to be honoured with the King's Award.
For our business is really the highest honor that we could ever receive. We were really founded on the idea that innovation is going to be the single biggest factor in changing the world. And so you can imagine we're all overwhelmed with pride.
The Nourish brand was only one of 10 West Midlands winners out of the 262 rewarded in total, and the only winner in Birmingham in the innovation category. But it isn't just about running a business. Melissa says she's passionate about the next generation of female entrepreneurs and works with By Women Built, a platform for female-owned businesses.
Less than 80% of young people can name a female entrepreneur, and that is something that we're really committed to changing the narrative on at BWB. I think you can't be it if you can't see it, and so myself and the other women involved in that cause are really trying to raise the profile of female entrepreneurs and make sure that young people are seeing them at the beginning of their career, where they're starting to think about what will I be.
Having launched in 2019, this business has already had to navigate a pandemic and high inflation. But with its King's Award for Enterprise proudly on display, their future has the royal seal of approval. Jack Carson, GB News, Smethwick.
Ah, lovely report there from Jack Carson. Shall we see what you've been saying at home then? I did say you've got a lot to say about Jacob Rees-Mogg and the harassment he's been on the receiving end of.
Yeah, that awful video doing the rounds of Jacob leaving Cardiff University. See if we can get it back up. The pro-Palestine mob surrounding him. One man in the clip even having to be held back because he's trying to physically get to him.
What is wrong with these students? Why do they think they have the right to do that?
Well, going back to our earlier segment, because the kids aren't being disciplined, I would argue.
Yes.
Sandy, good morning to you. You say these so-called protesters are troublemakers and should be arrested for a breach of the peace. And Mark says, if pro-Palestine mobs are attacking MPs, how can the Met justify not banning the marches?
It's interesting, Sandy says they should be arrested for a breach of the peace, because we do see the police using that to arrest people and to stop various protests and scufflings going on.
Only at St George's Day marches.
They'd never use it for that sort of thing, would they? And Karen says these students need throwing out of university for the attack on Jacob. I don't think that will happen.
No. Just one on civil servants. Ray says, these lazy, no-good civil servants, they forget they're paid by us, the taxpayer, so we should decide their times and conditions. I suggest if they want to Skype and work from home, then they have to have a 50% pay cut.
Gosh, Ray, I'm not sure I'd want to work for you. You'd have me chained to the desk. But still to come, we're going to bring you the latest showbiz gossip. There's quite a lot going on in the old showbiz world, isn't there?
Yeah, one that's really caught my eye this morning is Declan Rice, the Arsenal and England footballer. His girlfriend or partner has been subjected to really cruel trolling in recent weeks because she's just a normal, beautiful woman. She's a normal girl. She looks great, but people aren't happy that she's not some plastic fake wag. So we're going to get stuck into that with Ellie Phillips. She's here in just a sec. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK this weekend, some sunshine, some showers and pretty chilly temperatures for the time of year too. Low pressure sitting towards the south of the UK at the moment, and it's throwing up this weather front currently affecting the central part of England into parts of Wales. So here it will be quite a cloudy afternoon, further outbreaks of rain at times, turning increasingly patchy here though through the course of the day. Whereas towards the south and southwest we'll see some brighter skies which could set off a few hefty showers, particularly towards the southwest of England, whereas towards the north and northwest for Scotland and Northern Ireland here too, a mixture of sunshine and showers. Temperatures struggling given that northeasterly breeze, no better than 9 to 12 degrees towards the north and northwest, possibly 13 or 14 towards the southeast. As we go through the evening and during the overnight period, the showers towards the north and northwest will start to ease. We'll see more in the way of clear spells here. Whereas across the south and east of the UK, some heavy outbreaks of rain moving up from the south, particularly during the early hours of Sunday, reaching the east and southeast of Wales by the end of the night. Turning quite chilly towards the north and northwest, we could see a touch of frost here, temperatures below freezing in a few spots, but frost-free towards the south and east given that cloud and rain. Pretty wet across the east and southeast of the UK tomorrow, some heavy bursts of rain coupled with pretty strong winds too. It could brighten up briefly across East Anglia, setting off some heavy showers here, and generally brighter out towards the west and northwest with sunshine and scattered showers. Once again though, a pretty chilly day, temperatures no better than 9 to 12 towards the north, up to 13 towards the southeast.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday the 2nd of May,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 11:46. Ben and Emily with you on Saturday Morning Live. Time now for your weekly dose of showbiz news with the brilliant Ellie Phillips.
Good
morning,
thanks,
Ellie.
guys. Good morning.
How are you? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm really, really well, actually. I'm feeling good.
You're looking very well.
Thank you.
Glowing.
I appreciate that. We'll thank Charlotte Tilbury, but it's all good. I have lots of showbiz news for you this week, but the one I have to start with is a really worrying one because it happened last night, and it's to do with medical problems. So there's an ITV News anchor called Raghi Omar. He's a 56-year-old Somalian-born broadcast journalist.
Very talented journalist.
Incredibly talented. I mean, he's been doing this his whole life. And last night he anchored ITV News at 10. Shortly into anchoring, definitely within 5-10 minutes, his speech was slurred. He was struggling over the auto cue. And at one point, you could see that his left eye started to droop slightly. These are all really, really worrying signs for anyone who... We don't know what the medical issue is yet, but for anyone who has experienced someone having a stroke or a TIA, these are some of the signs that you can recognise. And viewers are very, very quick to tweet in, call in and say, this guy needs medical attention right now. ITV kept him on for the whole 30 minutes of the programme, and that really worried viewers. And in particular, I want to read one tweet from a medical professional. She said, I called at 10:10. This was to ITV. I told you as an ICU nurse who worked with stroke that Raghi Omar required an emergency ambulance. He displayed fast symptoms, and for anyone who doesn't know, that's face, arms, speech and time. So face is that the face starts to droop. Speech is that it becomes slurred. Arms are that you can't lift your arms properly, or sometimes it displays as not being able to write properly with pens. So sometimes it's not a full arm, it's just the hands. And time is of the essence when it comes to anything like that. ITV has said that since the show has finished, that he has received and is receiving medical treatment, and he thanks viewers for their well wishes. So it's good to know that he is getting treatment. But when it comes to potential TIAs or strokes, the first 3 hours are really, really crucial, because if you can get to hospital within that time, you can actually have an injection which thins a blood clot, because these are caused by blood clots stopping the flow of blood to the brain. So it's just really important. I think the message that come out of this is that if you see these signs, whether it turns out to be that or not, hopefully in his case it's not that and it's something much less severe, but they are some of the signs. And so if you see them or you spot them, it is just best to get some medical attention straight away.
Yeah, poor guy. Our thoughts go to Raggy Omar. He's a great journalist. He's been with ITV, ITN for, I think, decades even. I remember him when I was a kid doing live broadcasts out and about, you know, all across the world. So best wishes to
Yeah, there are lots of
Raggy.
questions, though, about ITV's duty of care and whether they made the wrong call there, allowing him to continue, aren't there?
I think because the calls and texts came in quite early on in the show, we see people saying it was in, you know, 5-10 minutes of what was going on, perhaps something more could have been done. Perhaps they could have replaced him quickly. I don't know what the situation was on the ground. Maybe they were getting an ambulance out to him at that time.
Maybe he said
fine.
out of vision that he didn't want to, you know,
exactly.
stop the show. Who knows?
So I'm assuming he was asked, "Are you okay to continue?" and he felt able to. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't want to jump to any conclusions either on his medical condition necessarily or what ITV were doing behind the scenes. But there are lots of questions. Of course, there are in a situation like this.
Should we move on to one that's close to my heart, because I'm an Arsenal fan, and in recent weeks, our star player, Declan Rice, he's been getting a lot of flack online because of the woman he has been with since he was a young teenager, who arguably, how to put this, she's just a normal, beautiful young woman. She's not your typical wag, wives and girlfriend of a footballer, but she's been getting trolled really cruelly. There she is.
So you can see her there. So that's Lauren Fryers, that's Declan's girlfriend. They're actually childhood sweethearts. They met back in 2016 at school. They welcomed their first baby together, a son called Jude, back in 2022, so 2 years ago. And what's happened this week is, it kicked off actually last Saturday. A viral video went round, which was allegedly a deep fake of a press conference in which Declan was asked, why don't you date glamour models and top pop stars, like the typical kind of like wag look? And that kind of sparked this conversation about, well, you know, why should he? You know, what? You know, she's a beautiful girl. He loves her. They love each other. They have this beautiful family. That happened last Saturday, and then on Tuesday, Arsenal played Chelsea, and Arsenal won
5-0.
5-0.
Wow.
And as Declan Rice went to take a corner, which is where the Chelsea fans were, they started chanting abuse about Declan Rice's girlfriend.
Horrible people.
The abuse was sexist.
And he heard it as well.
Misogynistic. It was, and it was body shaming, essentially saying that she's a larger woman, and that why, you know, and then essentially a lot of stuff in social media followed on from that.
Might see what they look like, eh?
This is the thing, and also I think in this situation, you can't win. If you're a normal, if you want to put it, average-looking woman dating a footballer because you're childhood sweethearts, you know, they're like, why would you be with her when you can have, you know, a glamour model or a reality star? And then on the flip side, if they're dating a glamour model or a reality star, it's like, well, they wouldn't be with you if you worked in Lidl, would they?
It's true, isn't it?
So you can't win in those situations as a footballer, but I think the crux of the issue here is, why is this woman who really doesn't live in the limelight at all being targeted?
She had to close down all her social media accounts.
So she deleted all her posts. So she's still got her accounts there. She's got about 76,000 followers on Instagram. She's taken all her posts down because of the amount of trolling she's getting on it.
Awful people. I tell you what.
Lovely-looking young woman.
Really lovely.
She looks great, and all these losers chanting and sending her messages, they wouldn't get within an arm's length of her in a nightclub or a bar.
Exactly. And it's sad because if you think about it, I mean, chanting of this nature, maybe not necessarily body shaming, but just misogynistic, sexist stuff, harks way back to like Victoria Beckham when she was, you know, in her prime as David Beckham's wife. And also, if you think about Danny Dyer, her partner is West Ham's Jared Bowen, and he gets a lot of abuse because of Danny Dyer. And again, it's very sexist. It's about, you know, what they do in the bedroom.
You can just imagine these guys with their beer bellies shouting abuse about this beautiful young woman's figure. Seriously.
They've probably not been with a woman in decades. Bunch of losers, low-grade losers.
Yeah.
Right, last story for us?
Last story. Have you seen Baby Reindeer?
No.
Oh my gosh. OK, Baby Reindeer. It's on Netflix. It's a 7-part series. It's written by a guy called Richard Gadd, and it's his true life story. It's about stalking. It's about sexual abuse. It's a very harrowing watch. It's 7 parts. It's not an easy watch.
I started it, actually. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
The acting is phenomenal, but it's a difficult watch. And what makes it, I think, even more concerning is that all the tweets and messages and things that you see are real. They were sent by his real-life stalker. Now, he changed names and specific details about the people. So he plays himself in this. So that actor there, that's Richard Gadd. He plays himself, but he calls himself Donnie. The 2 other main characters in it, one, this woman here, you can see, is his stalker. And then there's a sexual abuser it's in it as well. Now, internet sleuths, knowing that these people exist in real life, have tried to find them. The issue with that is now innocent people are being accused of sexual abuse and stalking. The police are now investigating someone who's been falsely accused of sexually abusing him because of this internet stalking sleuths, and they've had complaints come in. And Richard himself has spoken out, being like, people who are completely innocent are being really wrongly tarnished here. Please stop doing that. That's not the point of the film, the TV series, sorry.
Yeah.
And the series is very, very powerful because you see stalking and sexual abuse from his perspective. And also you understand a bit more about, it's not just a random stalker, you understand a bit more of their story, how it develops and how you feel for them as individuals.
It feels like a play, doesn't it?
Yes.
I've watched the first episode and it does feel like a very theatrical. The shots and the way it's... Yeah, it's a bit creepy.
And today, the interesting development in all this is that the real-life stalker, who's called Martha in the show, she's spoken out anonymously for the first time and said that she's being bullied.
Right, well, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through all of those big showbiz stories. That's it from us.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you home for watching. We'll see you next week. Darren Grimes is with you next. Have a good weekend.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK this weekend, some sunshine, some showers and pretty chilly temperatures for the time of year too. Low pressure sitting towards the south of the UK at the moment, and it's throwing up this weather front currently affecting the central part of England into parts of Wales. So here it will be quite a cloudy afternoon, further outbreaks of rain at times, turning increasingly patchy here though through the course of the day. Whereas towards the south and southwest we'll see some brighter skies which could set off a few hefty showers, particularly towards the southwest of England, whereas towards the north and northwest for Scotland and Northern Ireland here too, a mixture of sunshine and showers. Temperatures struggling given that northeasterly breeze, no better than 9 to 12 degrees towards the north and northwest, possibly 13 or 14 towards the southeast. As we go through the evening and during the overnight period, the showers towards the north and northwest will start to ease. We'll see more in the way of clear spells here, whereas across the south and east of the UK, some heavy outbreaks of rain moving up from the south, particularly during the early hours of Sunday, reaching the east and southeast of Wales by the end of the night. Turning quite chilly towards the north and northwest, we could see a touch of frost here, temperatures below freezing in a few spots, but frost-free towards the south and east given that cloud and rain. Pretty wet across the east and southeast of the UK tomorrow, some heavy bursts of rain coupled with pretty strong winds too. It could brighten up briefly across East Anglia, setting off some heavy showers here, and generally brighter out towards the west and northwest with sunshine and scattered showers. Once again though, a pretty chilly day, temperatures no better than 9 to 12 towards the north, up to 13 towards the southeast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash,